Hey guys, GV here with another edition of my Mass Effect Andromeda Pathfinder Guide series. Today I'm going to share my favorite build so far in Andromeda, the Annihilation Vanguard. I've used this setup for most of my stream playthrough, at least 15 hours, and it's a fast-paced, high-risk, high-reward class that just dominates in close quarters combat. Before we jump in, quick reminder that I upload Andromeda tips and tricks guides, commentary, and my stream playthrough here on the channel. If that content interests you, be sure and subscribe. Let's start with a brief overview of what this class is, what this build is all about. First off, it is biotics focused. The majority of our points are going to be spent in biotics, and all of our active abilities will be biotic based. I would call it an off-meta Vanguard build because it's based on a classic Vanguard, but we have one new ability in there that kind of mixes things up and changes the way that you play a traditional Vanguard, in my opinion. As you might guess, we're going to be using the Vanguard profile, although I've found that Adept has a higher ceiling. We'll talk more about this, but for the most part, it's Vanguard, and then you can use Adept if you want a different kind of variant of this build. For weapons, we're going to be using shotguns. There's a variety of different shotguns that we're going to go through, but primarily this is a close quarters combat build, so shotguns just fit the bill for that. Overall, you'll feel very aggressive and powerful with this build, and some builds have you sitting back and kind of just popping things that will break down defenses and shooting them down. This is not what this build is about. This is very in-your-face, close quarters, aggressive combat. Now taking a look at active skills, and a few things before we jump into this. First off, you're probably going to be around level 34 before you can actually put all of the points into all of the categories that I have, because there's a lot of points to be spent here. However, you don't have to be level 34 to enjoy this build whatsoever. You just need Charge, Shockwave, and Annihilation, and then a few of these, passives here and a few things in the combat tree that we're going to go to later, and you should be able to pull this off. So don't worry, you don't need to be a specific level for this. Also, a few things to keep in mind. I generally favor damage over things like radius or gun damage or melee damage. I usually favor biotic damage, and we'll get into that once we talk about the actual evolution. So here, first off, we have Charge. This is a classic Vanguard ability. The first three ranks, you don't have a choice in where you branch off, but of course, ranks 4, 5, and 6 on all abilities allow you to choose. So as I just mentioned, I usually favor damage over radius. So definitely for rank 4, I recommend damage and force. That's a really nice upgrade, incremental upgrade there from rank 3 to rank 4. And then, like I said, I usually favor power damage over gun and melee damage for this build specifically. So I went with power synergy here, again, just further boosting our biotic ability damage. Rank 6 is really interesting for Charge because you can either choose to charge almost every 2 seconds or less. It's kind of crazy. Or you can choose damage resistance. It's a little more sustainable, especially on higher difficulties. I found that Bastion is generally speaking better for Charge. So that is definitely the option that I went with Charge. And Charge is just a great ability. It's something you're going to be using a lot for this build. So definitely focus on getting this up super quickly. So next we have Shockwave. Again, it's kind of a classic Vanguard ability. It detonates your primers. So that's the same thing with Charge. Shockwave is another detonator. We'll talk about how you use these abilities in specific orders when we get to the actual playstyle of this build. So going on to the evolutions here, again, it's either radius or damage. I err on the side of damage. That's usually what I go with, so that's what I chose with Shockwave. It's a very damaging ability if you do that. This next one is reach or recharge speed. The general idea here is that you're charging in on enemies, so you don't need that extra shockwave distance. It really doesn't help that much because you're going to be up in the face of enemies in the first place. So I found recharge speed to be better. I think rank 6 is really a toss-up. I think that lifting Shockwave being a primer is very good, but the only thing that you're really going to use this with, in my opinion and from my experience, is Charge again. So if you're going to charge in and then Shockwave, you're going to have to wait for your charge to come up again, and then you can actually detonate them while they're floating, or you might be able to actually detonate with another shockwave. I haven't tested that specifically, but I think generally speaking, either lifting shockwave or anti-armor is good. Anti-armor is definitely helpful if you're going to be super aggressive and go up on hydras and fiends and other things like that. Just don't get, picked up and eaten by the fiend, obviously. So shockwave, that's kind of the evolution path that I took. And then Annihilation. Annihilation, I want to brag about it for a second. It's one of my favorite new abilities in the game along with Backlash. I think Annihilation is such a cool ability that brings, really interesting different ways to play the game. So let's hop in here. First three ranks we have to take. Then we have damage radius or recharge penalty speed. So Normally for the radius, I would say pick this, but again, for the most part, you're going to be charging into groups of enemies, and I feel that the radius by itself is already good enough. I don't think you need it. And the thing with Annihilation is that it actually increases your power recharge, it decreases your power recharge speed. It makes it slower by 60%, which can be a pretty big hamper on, having to wait for your shockwave to come back around. So I think that the recharge penalty, reduction is a really good idea if you want to focus on your biotic powers. Now, radius may be a better idea if you want to focus more on killing enemies with your shotgun. So we'll get to more of that in just a second here. So rank 5, this one is really a no-brainer for me. I don't see the advantage of having a movement speed bonus with Annihilation. This may be good in multiplayer, but in single player, it really doesn't matter. So I would really never take this evolution there. I would always go with enemies take 20% additional damage from all sources while they're in your Annihilation field, which is absolutely insane. It's a straight damage buff. So definitely would take that. And then on rank 6, either you have lifting normal enemies, just red bar health enemies into the air for 8 seconds, or you have restoring your shields every time an enemy dies in your Annihilation field. You're going to be killing a lot of enemies in your Annihilation field. I promise you that, with your shotgun and your shockwave and your charge. So I think this is awesome. This is a way that you can pretty much manually boost your shields back up without having to charge. Just kill enemies that are in your Annihilation radius, and that'll get the job done for you. So I really do like this rank of Annihilation here. And those are your 3 primary abilities. This is your bread and butter, what you're going to be using the entire time, and we'll actually go into how you use them when we talk about the playstyle. Moving down to our passives, we take Barrier, Offensive, Biotics, and Containment. They're all really good for this build. So Barrier is awesome for almost any class, I feel. You get things like max shields, reduction delay on your regeneration of those things, your shield regeneration. Once you get to the actual evolution, I usually go for bonus max shields here instead of these bonuses. These seem less helpful, in my opinion, than just an overall boost to your max shields at all times. So that's definitely effective. I really like Biotic Link at rank 5. This has your max shields with an active biotic effect boosting by 40%. So as long as you have an active effect, which would be Annihilation, for example, you have 40% more shields. That is very good for, kind of the playstyle we're going for. And the other option is just not as good, in my opinion. And then finally, we have shields restored on biotic kill 10%. So again, this is just boosting your shield. If you take this stuff that I'm showing you right here, it's very hard to die as long as you're very active with your abilities and just trying to be as efficient as possible when killing your enemies. This right here, Saving Barrier at rank 6, is more of a, last resort kind of ability. If you're about to die, then this will kick in. I much prefer Active Barrier. I think this is something you're going to benefit from more often unless you're playing on Insanity or something like that. So I really do like Active Barrier, and I love Barrier overall. Now looking at offensive biotics, this is just going to buff the power of all of our biotic abilities. It just makes sense to take it. So again, if it's between recharge speed and damage, I usually take damage. That's usually just how I play the game. And then I really like detonation. I think this is a great idea because we're going to be detonating with shockwave and priming with annihilation, and then detonating again with charge. So there's going to be a lot of biotic detonations. I think this is just something to focus on with this build overall. And then, like I said, if it's melee damage, weapon damage, or biotic damage, I usually err on the side of biotic damage for this. So rank 6, I would take Biotic Expert. Next, we have Containment, which is kind of like just boosting what you're already good at across the board. I think this is a really good idea. And then you have rank 5, which is a really good evolution there. So starting with rank 4, this is actually where I take your radius instead of duration. You really don't have anything that affects duration with this build. We have Charge, which isn't a duration ability in and of itself. We have Shockwave, which is a little bit, but not so much. It's a pretty quick ability. And then Annihilation, which is just pretty much a passive ability that you stick on and you don't take off with this build. So you wouldn't take duration in this case. You would definitely take radius. And then I really like rank 5, like I said, Concussive Detonation. Biotic combo detonations will knock down normal enemies. They'll just get knocked down onto the ground. So if you charge into a large group of just red bar health enemies, they will all get knocked down from your detonation. That's going to happen no matter what. So this is a very good ability to take. And then rank 6, where again, we're going with area of effect, radius, and force over this interesting ability here, which increases the duration of your effects, per enemy that you kill. Again, duration is not really a focus for us, so we're going with rank 6 event horizon. So that is it for our biotic abilities. Again, there's a lot of stuff going on here and a lot of points to be spent. And that kind of, funnels into why we might pick Adept, which is something we're about to get to. So we don't have any points in tech. That's just not what this build is about. But we do have some points into biotic, which is why you might want to take Vanguard, for example. So like I said, we're focusing on shotguns. Shotguns, of course, you're going to take the first 3 ranks. That's what we're using. And then for this first rank, I haven't found that 15% spare ammo is really worth it compared to the weight. With the weight, you can carry the heaviest shotgun in the game and also a sidearm, which is something I definitely recommend. So I like taking rank 4 weight. And then rank 5, I just don't favor reload speed over clip size. Plus, with this, you get 25% more clip size versus 15% reload speed. So I find this is a better increase there. And then with the final evolution here, it's either damage and force or damage boost and melee damage boost. You could go either way here. Again, if you're going for more of a Vanguard and you're going to be meleeing, then melee synergy may be better for you. But since we're not, and I'm not usually, I usually go for this damage boost and shotgun force boost instead. So that's my final evolution for that. And then we have combat fitness as well. So I like taking combat fitness across the board most of the time just for survivability, because you get 11% max health, 11% shields, and then some other really helpful stuff. So again, more weight capacity and increased weapon loadout size if you want to take multiple sidearms or multiple shotguns in a sidearm. This definitely allows you to do that. Once we get to the rank 4 here, we have either consumable effectiveness or a bunch of regeneration for your health and shields. That is very useful. I find this useful for our survivability since we're up close and personal. At rank 5, either you have weapon loadout size and weapon weight capacity, further, or clip size, spare ammo, and then some combat power cell upgrades. So we're not using combat powers at all, so I find that final rank for this pretty useless, so I wouldn't pick that. But generally speaking, I like having that more weight capacity. Again, multiple shotguns, multiple sidearms. If you want to do that, this extends all the way to carrying 4 weapons, so it's definitely a useful thing there. And then finally, I like having the low health damage resistance. As you guys realize with the barrier, we didn't take that kind of last resort survivability thing. This is another upgrade for that. So if you find yourself in a bad situation, hold the line could definitely save your life. And in the trenches, it's not super useful for us because we're not going to use a lot of cover. We're going to be very aggressive and charging from enemy to enemy to keep our shield up. So I wouldn't take in the trenches for this. Before we take a look at these skills in action, we're going to talk about the profiles, because you basically have 2 choices. Like I said at the beginning, you have Adept or Vanguard. So let's start with Vanguard. The bonuses you get from Vanguard are melee, biotic recharge speed, power shield cost reduction, and max shield. So essentially you got a little bit of melee, a little bit of survivability, and a little bit of biotics, and then you have melee attacks restoring your shields, which is actually really nice. So the problem with this, from what I showed you guys in the upgrades, is that we didn't really focus on melee. So you're getting a little bit of a melee boost from this, but all of your other abilities are boosting your biotics. And it's really your choice. If you want to play more of a melee heavy Vanguard build with the Annihilation Vanguard, then you totally can, and Vanguard is good for that. The problem is you have a low ceiling. As you can tell, we are Vanguard rank 3. In order to rank it up, we need 50 points invested in combat and biotics. What I showed you guys tops out at 42 points in combat, and then we have 126 in biotics. So essentially, to get a higher rank of Vanguard, we'd have to put points in pistols or something like that. Something else in here I would definitely recommend. Not combat tools, because we don't have any combat power abilities. But yeah, pistols for your sidearm, for example. You just be putting points in here. Wouldn't necessarily be a waste, because you might use your sidearm. But that's just to get it to the 50-point threshold so we can rank Vanguard up. However, I've found that the Adept bonuses are actually better for what we're trying to do with this build, because you get Biotic Force, Biotic AoE damage and radius, Biotic Effect Duration, which again isn't super important, then Biotic Combo Radius, and then you get Biotic Echoes, which has your combos setting off additional explosions with each enemy they touch. Think about that. That is just a massive amount of explosions. It's super powerful. And then we can rank this up even further. So to get to, we're already rank 4, by the way, not rank 3 with the Vanguard, rank 4 with the Adept. And then in order to boost it further, we have to get 156 points in biotics. And you could take something like Singularity just to mix things up, and then occasionally swap that in for Annihilation if you want to kind of get a different feel for this Vanguard. But more importantly, we're putting the skills in there to further boost the rank of this profile. And so I think that Adept has a higher ceiling for this ability, and in some cases might be better than Vanguard for this build. So just keep that in mind. Now we're taking a look at these abilities in action. So there are 4 things I want you guys to keep in mind as you're watching me take on this group of enemies. And first off, you want to activate Annihilation before you go into a group of enemies or as you're going in. You want to keep Annihilation on at all times. It's pretty much a passive ability that only goes away if you deactivate it or you get out of combat. Keep in mind though, as you go in and out of combat situations, you need to keep reactivating because it'll deactivate out of combat. So number 1, keep Annihilation on at all times, activate it before you go into combat. Number 2, you want to charge into the largest group of enemies and then shockwave them. That's generally speaking what you're going to do to open up every single fight. The next thing you're going to do is use your shotgun while you're waiting for cooldowns to come back on your charge and your shockwave. And then number 4 is you're going to either charge away for more shields or shockwave for more damage, depending on your scenario. So as you can tell, I activated Annihilation immediately. That's what I chose to do. I'm picking the largest group of enemies, charging in, and shockwaving with Annihilation active. Then I get huge explosions, multiple explosions because of the adept profile that I show you guys before. So yeah, generally speaking in that scenario, I would try to finish off enemies if there were any left, but there weren't with my shotgun. So I've got all my abilities back. I chose to shockwave there, but if I was low on shields, you know, and I needed to get more shields, I would charge towards an enemy instead. So it's very situational. And, you know, using your shotgun is really just a way to keep damaging enemies until you get your other abilities back. I don't know what was going on there. But yeah, depending on how that situation went down, if my health went down quickly, I would try to charge to get more shields back, right? Because that's a, you know, kind of a major tenet of being a Vanguard is using charge to get your shields back and to close the gap. But if not, I would use Shockwave to, you know, complete those explosions within my Annihilation radius. So that's pretty much it, guys. Rinse and repeat. It's super powerful. As you could tell, that was a normal group of enemies. We just tore through them. It's absolutely ridiculous when you have all these abilities maxed out. So once again, here are the 4 things that you always want to keep in mind. First off, always have Annihilation on. Put it on before you go into combat scenarios. It deactivates when you leave combat scenarios, so you have to keep activating it, and it's a passive. Number 2, you want to charge into the largest group of enemies and then shockwave them. That's going to complete your initial biotic combo. Number 3, you're going to want to use your shotgun to kill enemies while you're waiting for cooldowns on your other biotic abilities. And then number 4, you're going to make the decision either to charge away once your cooldowns come back, or you're going to use Shockwave if you're okay on your health and everything. You don't need more shields to deal more damage. So really, it's rinse and repeat. It's really fun, super fast paced, and I love this combat playstyle. Now we're going to take a look at my weapon and armor recommendations. Starting out with weapons, what you just saw there in the gameplay, the electrical gun, is the Rieger carbine. That's how it is by default. That is not an augmentation. It's a Corian weapon, and it's really cool. So I've got 3 general recommendations for you guys. Of course, there's some ultra rare shotguns that are just really awesome. The Piranha, for example, is really good, but these are the ones that I'll recommend for most players. First off, the Rieger carbine is really fun to use. It's got a high rate of fire, a large clip. You can keep firing it and keep having that electrical beam shoot at your enemies. I think it's a good all-around weapon, and it's fun to use. So Rieger is definitely a recommendation. The Disciple is also a recommendation. I think this is one of the best all-around shotguns in the game, and it's just uncommon. So you're going to find it pretty early on. It's got good damage, good rate of fire, and a good clip size. So this is good all around. Doesn't excel at anything necessarily, but it's good at everything. And then finally, we have the Dawn, which is truly a high damage, low clip size, low rate of fire weapon. And then I went ahead and augmented it to have seeking plasma bolts. So this will heat seek to your enemies. This is a very interesting weapon as well. So you kind of got really high damage, low clip size, low rate of fire. You've got good all around with the Disciple. And then you've got high rate of fire, low damage with the Rieger carbine. Those are 3 good recommendations I would say you should totally check out with this build. Just pick the one that you like the most. And then in terms of armor, I'm sure you're wondering, what is that really cool armor that you're using? It is the Helios armor set, which I don't know if you can get this out in the world. I crafted it, so you'll have to craft this under the Helios technology tab under armor. It'll show up as Helios Defender armor first, but as you rank it up, it'll kind of change its name, but the general name for this set is Helios armor. So with the helmet, you're going to get power damage, which is great for this build. Like I said, I think it's great to kind of boost the power damage. That's my preference. And then you get a little bit of weapon damage as well. And then the only other piece with this is the chest. And the chest extends to the arms and the legs. So with the chest, you get power damage, weapon damage, and damage resistance for a little more survivability. So, you know, it looks really cool, obviously, like I showed you guys in the gameplay. It just looks awesome. looks aren't everything, but seriously, this is a good looking set of armor. And then it really does kind of fit into the Adept Vanguard that I've been using and showing off to you guys. And so really you've got a lot of options in terms of weapons and armor. There may be some better armor if you want to go for more of a melee build. That option, might be there for you. You might want to go with something else, but I'm just going to show you guys what the Dawn does here on this IROC. But yeah, see, did you see how much damage that was? That was insane. I just can't get eaten. That's my main concern. But yeah, it really does kind of depend on your preferences in terms of weapons, especially. The Dawn is just huge damage, seriously. But the Rieger is kind of the opposite, and as you saw, it's really awesome in its own respect. In terms of mods, I usually go for damage, generally speaking. Anything that increases the damage of the weapon, that doesn't sacrifice the damage. I don't know if there's any mods like that, but I usually go for damage across the board. And in terms of augmentations, I would also try heat-seeking stuff. I think heat-seeking might be really good for specific weapons. It really does depend on what you want to go for. A lot of this game is preference. You kind of can't go wrong with a lot of things. There is a general way that you should be going about things, but this is definitely the armor set that I recommend and the weapons that I recommend. Again, you could go with the Piranha or the Crusader, other ultra rare shotguns, but these are the ones that I like and definitely recommend for you guys. Finally, let's take a look at Squadmate recommendations. And before we do, I just want to say, generally, in my opinion, there's not clear-cut decisions here. There's no one that you definitely want to bring with any specific class, in my opinion, because we have a lack of control compared to the original trilogy over our squadmates. So you can't kind of plan these attacks. Combos are reactionary instead of premeditated. You can't set someone up, use Liara to set a singularity and then charge in to combo it. It just doesn't work like that in this game, and that's kind of unfortunate. So I think it's more about countering enemies. So let's talk through each of these companions one by one. So first off, we have Cora. This is definitely an aggressive pick. She will be charging in just like you will be as a Vanguard, but shield boost is really nice. It adds an extra layer of survivability to your character. So if you want Cora for this, I think she's actually a solid pick. Jaal is also a solid pick because of energy drain. He's anti-shields and anti-synthetic, and as an all-biotics class as an Annihilation Vanguard, you're not going to be taking down shields super easily. So having his energy drain is definitely a nice utility there. I like Vetra because she's kind of a balancing out pick. She doesn't have anything which will have her charging in on enemies. She has good survivability and she has range. So in order to balance out your super aggressive up close playstyle, she'll have range, and also turbocharge will combo with your abilities to a certain degree as well. Drac is another super aggressive pick, just like Cora is. He's got Blood Rage, Incinerate, and Flat Cannon. He's super anti-armor as well. And again, as biotics, we're not really anti-armor. We're not anti-shields or anti-armor. And so having someone that can deal with armor as well, in the same way that Jaal is good against shields, Drac is a good pick to have, nice utility there. PB is also nice as well. She's got the debuff with Invasion, which works against, I think, all different vulnerabilities in the game, different shields and armors and whatnot. And then she can also biotic detonate with her shockwave on your abilities that prime enemies. So PB is a solid pick. And then I also think Liam is a solid pick for the same reason that Drac and Jaal are, and that's because of Overload. Overload is such a good detonator, and it's anti-shields. So for the same reasons that we already talked about. So as you can tell, there's no clear-cut decision. I really don't believe there is. I really do like Drac to kind of combo with me, not combo with me, but be super aggressive with me. And then someone that has a little bit of range. So Vetra or PB or Jaal, I would definitely pair with Drac. So that's usually who I take with, when I'm running this build. So guys, that is it for the Annihilation Vanguard. Again, this is such a fun class. It's the one I've had the most fun with actually over my playthrough so far, and it's just overpowered on normal. Seriously, I got to a point where I was just wrecking everything and I needed to switch my class up because it was just kind of methodical. That's how effective it is. So anyways, guys, let me know how you feel about this build. Let me know in the comment section below, what are your favorite builds so far in the game? I plan on, sharing more builds with you guys, and also let me know what you think about this format. Is it a little too long? This video kind of got longer than I expected it to be, so let me know about that as well. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it, and also don't forget to subscribe for commentary, tips and tricks guides, and my stream playthrough coming again soon on my channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll talk to you next time.